Yes.
Yes.
So, the Belgian Brain Council asked me what can be done by association in order to foster the creation of kind of, general objective of the association. One of the objectives to create a brain registry. And so we had a meeting, quite interesting one. Some of the people here were there during this meeting, and to try to identify the different aspects of the project of the association. And then I would like we work a little bit about that with my team. I'm a team at the intersection of legal technology, between technology and law. And what I would like to present you today is a proof of concept for an altruistic data platform. So let's go back first to the cancer registry. Cancer registry, it looks like a very useful tool in order to foster not only research, but also policy regarding treatment of cancer, was an achievement that did not start from the state or public authorities. It started as not only in Belgium, but also everywhere. And it took like, yes.
It looks like.
Ah, yes, yes. Okay, you cannot see there, so I need to share. Yes. Okay. So I will, in that case, do this. Yes, 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 it's okay. I will share here. Sorry for that. Can you see my screen now?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So if you go back to the cancer registry, it was not a project that was led by public authorities at the beginning. It was a long process starting everywhere in Europe, starting most of the time from private initiatives, from patients and from associations. And as you can see on this map presented by the Open Network of Cancer Registries, it took like 67 years to be like in the context we are now, with a lot of information about that. If you look at the Belgian history about the cancer registry, let's say you had already some initiative in the 50s, but it starts really in 1983 with the National Cancer Registry, with a lot of work that was done, especially in Flanders. And it's only in 2005 that the foundation of the Belgian Cancer Registry was created and recognized legally in 2006. So the presentation, I think this is quite interesting to see what was in the past, to understand how association can bring a huge contribution in the development of this kind of very huge project regarding collecting data and having data about specific kind of disease. So, of course, then when the Belgian Brain Council asked me, okay, how to build a brain health registry, how can we contribute and what can be done? No, in a bottom-up perspective, it looks like a kind of challenge. It's a kind of challenge, but at the same time, we are also in a different context. And I would like to underline two different aspects that have changed. The first one is, of course, that we have digital technologies that are a little bit cheaper than they were, and also that we have a very different legal framework regarding data, use of data, access to data, etc. Because we are in the process in Europe to have these European data spaces, all these different data spaces that will be created. And we have discussed already a little bit about the health data space. That's just one part of the project. And the idea of European regulations was really to not to prevent the development of digital Europe, but to build a digital Europe based on trust. And all the regulations that exist were developed in that perspective, including the General Data Protection Regulation that a lot of people are complaining about because they see that mainly as something to prevent the sharing of data. But if you remember the complete title of the GDPR, it's also about the free movement of personal data. In the General Data Protection Regulation, regarding the right to access your data and to share your data, you have, and I mean, especially two different articles that I would like to discuss a little bit about is Article 15 and Article 20. Article 15 is the one that most of you knows, is about the right of access by the data subject to their own data. And of course, when someone asks to have access to his own data, the data controller should provide this data, and if it's asked in an electronic format, you should receive also your data in an electronic form. And then regarding, you have a second aspect, is the right to data portability. And the right to data portability is the right to receive your personal data or to ask a data controller to share with another entity in a machine-readable format your own data. So these rights are quite important. And in when they developed the GDPR, the idea is that these two rights will help to develop a European data space. But that was not completely conclusive. It was not completely conclusive for different reasons that I will address. But these two articles, some of you will say, but does these two rights apply also regarding health data? Because that's what we are discussing about. And in principle, Article 9, prevents the processing of data concerning health, saying that health data cannot be processed, and the processing of health data should be prohibited. But of course, there are several exceptions to this rule, and explicit consent is, for instance, one of the exceptions. If you have the explicit consent of the patient or the data subject, you can process health data. So why people do not use these rights, or why we do not yet have a European data space? One of the reasons, and I think that's exactly what we have discussed right now, is that it's really difficult for individuals to implement. It's difficult to implement because if you have the right of access and the right to data portability, but as an individual people, you are nothing in front of big organizations like hospitals or others. So that's one of the reasons why the European Commission and then the Council and the Parliament have adopted new regulations. That one of these new regulations is the Data Governance Act that will be applicable, that's already voted, applicable from the 24th of September. And they have decided to create a very new kind of services that are the data intermediation services. And the idea of these data intermediation services is that it's any kind of organization that will try to help people, that data subjects that seek to make their personal data available, or natural persons that seek to make non-personal data available, and potential data user, including making available the technical or other means to enable such services, and in particular, enabling the exercise of the data subject's right provided in GDPR. That's what it means, this regulation. So the idea is that these data intermediation services will be there in order to help people to collect the data and share the data. That's the idea. Some of these intermediation services will be for profit, and some of them will also be not for profits. That are the data altruistic organization. So what are these data altruistic organization, and what is data altruism is defined in Data Governance Act. The data altruistic organization means basically organization that will help voluntary sharing of data on the basis of the consent of data subject to process personal data pertaining to them, without seeking or receiving a reward that goes beyond compensation related to the cost that they incur when they make their data available for objectives of general interest. So these are data altruistic organization. What is interesting with data altruistic organization that will help people to share the data with data user for public interest is that they have less compliance obligation than intermediation services, other intermediation services that are for profit. And as long as you don't make business out of that, you will have less compliance obligations, even if you will still have some, of course, including respect for GDPR. In order to help these data altruistic organizations to do their job, the European Commission will publish also what they call in Article 25 of Data Governance Act, the European Data Altruistic Consent Form, that will be applicable everywhere in Europe, and that you can use in order to decide to give to have an organization sharing your data for purpose of general interest. This form will be available by September in an electronic, machine-readable form, and also in a written form, printed form. So you see that you have there the two first building blocks are a kind of constriction, that is, you have individuals having their rights on their data, and then you have organization that can play a role in order to help these people to share the data with data users. But of course, this is only part of this is also only two building blocks. I think you should add an additional one, which is the written mandate. It's not connected to specifically to data law. Is the fact that you can exercise your right according to the GDPR on the basis of a mandate. So that means that not only you can share data with a data altruistic organization to make these data available, but also you can give a mandate to these organizations to contact the hospital, to contact the doctor, to contact INAMI, etc., and to exert your rights, because the organization will act on your behalf. And the CNIL, the French Data Protection Authority, has produced a complete study on this exercise, on this idea of exercising rights through a written mandate. And of course, in the context of the European Health Data Space, that's a regulation that is not yet out, these data altruism organizations will play a role, and they will be submitted, of course, to specific kind of rules, especially regarding cybersecurity. So with all these different blocks, legal blocks, you can build a hub. You can build a hub where patient that wants to share the data, for instance, can not only give explicit consent to process data for a specific purpose like research, but you can also give consent and give a mandate to this organization so that they will collect the data on your behalf and take the contact with the legal service, for instance, of this hospital that do not want to give access to the data to the person, the data subject. So on this, so that's the different rights that may be useful in order to build a Belgian Brain Data Hub, at least to start. So then what would be a Belgian Brain Data Hub as a secured data platform to share your data for research and policy in accordance with European law? And that's what we have tried to design. So basically you have three different processes starting from the patients or the data subject that would like to share the data. You have a process regarding data provider that are not necessarily the data subject, like hospitals, doctors, etc., all the data controllers. And you have a third process from the perspective of the data user, for instance, university that want to do research. And the idea is to combine, I will not go into the details of all these different boxes, you will receive a copy of the PowerPoint, but the idea is to create a hub that would connect these different processes. So you can easily share the data to give a mandate and to give access to your data to organization that wants to do research with the data. So if you want a general overview of the approach, is that you have a patient process, and on basis of patient process, okay, I would like to share this and this kind of data. You will create it. You will create different jobs. That means that you will send requests automatically with the proof that you get the explicit consent, you get the mandate, so you ask for the data. So you will send that to the data provider, for instance, hospitals, for instance, organizations that have some data. And then on this basis, the data controller will have 2 or 3 months, according to European law, to provide you with the data. Of course, then you need some kind of quality control before that needs to be organized in order to integrate this information in your database, and then an anonymization engine in order to have statistical information on the basis of this data. So if you get the information from the data provider, then you will have potentially you can share this data with data user, but of course they will have also to sign different kind of documents, and you will have a check of whether they are equipped to use the data, personal data, and especially health data. So that means that from a legal point of view, you have the patient giving explicit consent and mandates to exercise their rights on the basis of Article 15 and 20. And then all this goes to the Belgian Brain Data Hub that will then ask or request the data from the data provider under specific kind of contractual agreements. And then the Belgian Brain Data Hub will register different kind of data users that will have to sign, of course, code of ethics, and sign also data use licenses in order to use this data for research. So what does that, how it looks like? Of course, it's a demo, is not yet ready to use.
Whoa.
Of course, I cannot. Can you see? No, you cannot see. I will share like this. What will you look like is some kind of system like this. When you decide to identify, I'm a patient, I'm a data user, I'm someone from the Belgian Brain Data Hub, or I'm a data provider. Then you will, of course, have to register with your EID or it's me. And then if you're a patient, for instance, you will confirm your registration. Then you will have an explanation with also a video explaining how your data will be used, what you can agree, etc., etc. And on this basis, you will have the European Data Altruistic Consent Form that you can sign online for research, for instance, statistics, this kind of information. And then you will have, of course, a secure way to sign this Data Altruistic Consent Form that can be then used by the organization and give the right for the organization to process your health data. That's first step. Then perhaps you want to provide some data or provide information regarding people in your entourage that can provide some data that are interesting and that you want to share through a form. So then you will provide some data like the name of your doctors, the medical institutions, etc., etc. So it makes the work a little bit easier. And or you don't have data, and then you can just go to the next step. But the idea is that you will provide some data there, and then you give a mandate. This mandate is a mandate for the association to exert, to basically, in order for the organization to exert your data access and data portability rights towards the different organizations that have your data. Then you will sign, of course, and that's a good thing is that we have a lot of tools to do that. And when you have done that, then you are all set. So that's you are ready. Then it's the job of the organization to collect the data and to deal with the data. And then you will have a kind of dashboard on which you can, of course, exercise your rights. So ask to stop, for instance, the processing of data by the association. You will be able to see who is processing your data. You will be able to see the explicit consent that you have signed. You can be able to see the mandates that you give to the Belgian Brain Data Hub, etc., etc. So you have a continuous control on your data through this system. So this is, for the perspective, the most important one from the patient. Of course, you have other entry points, like the one from in the perspective of a data provider. What will have a data provider? What will a data provider receive? Provider will receive first a request to give the data, but of course we need a secure environment. So you will receive a code. So then you enter the code, and then you have access to a secure environment in which you can, the data provider can provide the data in a secure environment. Then you will have, of course, explanation of the code of ethics, signature of the code of ethics for the organization if they want to participate, and then all set, you have the data that you will have to implement in the database. Then, if you're a data provider, if you are a data user, you of course have to register. There is something that is not yet there, but you have a kind of check of your organizational and technical ability to deal with health data. Then you will have to sign of course, first the code of ethics of the Belgian Brain Data Hub. And then if the Belgian Brain Data Hub give you the right to process data for the specific purposes that were accepted by the data subject, the system will generate a data use license that you have to sign. And that you will anyway have to sign again every 12 months because the idea is to minimize the time you can use the data and to have a control on that. And then you continue and you go to your use board when you will have an idea what are the data that I can process and how what is the license, should I renew the authorization, etc. You will, as a data user, have also a kind of way to see what is your relation, what are your relationship to the Belgian Brain Data Hub. So, of course, this is a demo, but I think that's one, and with a broad concept of what you can do in order to collect data and to have a Belgian Brain Data Hub. But I think that's the direction that, I mean, the European Commission wants to have as many players in the European digital space or European digital area, so that we have access to more data and we have the ability to develop, for instance, data-driven, we would say data-driven health development. So that's the result of the discussion we had, and I'm happy to discuss about these results.
Thank you, Gregory. It was very inspiring, and indeed, it's a nice way to act. And the introduction made by our friend Kune illustrate that this is a way we can process, because it needs to be established at different levels, because there are too many peoples to be involved, and you cannot collect data from patient and hospitals and INAMI and all that is still very fragmented. And your hub is one of the contribution to construct this final national or European health data.